Hey all, if you're not caught up to the latest episode, you might not have heard the good news, but our Ghosts of Harrenhal merchandise site is open for the holidays. So if you're looking to get your loved one some Ghosts of Harrenhal merchandise, head to our shop. Or if you're interested in asking your loved ones for some Ghosts of Harrenhal merchandise for yourself, head to ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com and stock up. All right, on with the show.
Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 269 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 43 of A Feast for Crows. That's Cersei 10. And just before we go any further, can I just point out that for 260 episodes, roughly, it said George R.R. Martin in our notes, and I skipped over the RR just because it's too difficult to say at the end of that sentence when I'm talking as fast as I do. So he's just George Martin, even though it's always told me to say it the other way.
It's understandable. I have noticed, but it is understandable, yes. Well, anyway, we're going to chat about the chapter like we always do, and we're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Unless, of course, you have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers, then we are going to spoil things for you. But regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
By the way, that's guaranteed today. We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. And I just read the listener correspondence, and they have a dig at me, which is... Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. All right, quickly, into talk. Tell me about your trip to Los Angeles. I need to know.
It was a really nice time. With 19 family members under one roof, saying that we had a really nice time is
borderline miracle.
Yes, especially with my family. We did. We had a really good time. Everybody got along well for the most part.
Was there an event? Was there an event?
Just a holiday season.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
No wedding or anything like that. You
just
got together as family. How nice.
Yeah. Yes, it was nice, and it worked out really well. And but the most interesting bit that I have to tell you about is the place that we stayed in.
Uh-huh.
It was I don't know. Did I show you pictures? I don't know if I showed you
not
pictures.
yet. I don't think
it was an absolute certified Hollywood Hills mansion that my nephew Andrew was generous enough to rent for the whole family.
Wow.
Yeah. Quick plug for him, if you're not already following him, Channel 5 News, he does some great stuff there. He needs no endorsement from me. His videos get millions of views within a day of downloading. Ours get millions less. So, but anyway, yeah, it was.
So
like
you're saying we're close?
Sorry, we're just a few million shy. But it was like the quintessential picturesque Hollywood mansion with, the gated circled drive out front and had a private basketball court and tennis court and gym and this huge sauna and, of course, a pool and a hot tub. And my favorite thing of the whole trip was the view, because it was at the very top of the whatever Hollywood hill we were on. And the view was straight out of a Hollywood glamour movie. Like, I could not stop watching the little twinkling lights of the city down below us, which was all awesome. I mean, I'm painting a pretty amazing picture, right?
So far. Imagine the disappointment of our listeners.
But it was a little odd. I don't think the house was meant to be lived in the way that we lived in it. I think it was meant and primarily used for film shoots and celebrity parties. The owner of the house was there when we got there, and he told us, a laundry list of celebrities who had hosted parties in the house. And earlier that week, Michael Phelps was there shooting a commercial for whatever he's hawking. And DraftKings was there the morning of the day we got there. So, I think that's primarily what it was used for, because it was kind of like living in a model home. Like the basic things, like it looks great from in pictures. That's why I said it looks like it I think is primarily used for photo shoots and commercials and things of that nature. Because when you get up close and start living in it, basic things didn't work. Like blinds, for instance. All the blinds in the house were automated, and at least 25% of them didn't work. So we had this like nearly 10,000 square foot, many, many millions of dollars mansion, and to have sheets thrown over most of the windows because the blinds wouldn't go up and down.
Oh, I love it. The Rays are in town and they're lowering the tone.
Right. And like several of the showers didn't work right. Our shower had the shower head, water came out of it.
Right.
Then water was also spurting out of the top of the shower head all over the place. We had towels all around the shower because it was spraying everywhere. Like the pump for the soap dispenser didn't work, so we had to take the lid off of it and like scoop the soap out with our hands to shower. Like generally, like the furniture looked really nice in the pictures, and if you were just looking at it from a distance, it looked like nice furniture, but they were either super uncomfortable or damaged. Like the legs were falling off of them, and it just lacked a lot of like basic life items. And one of the weirdest things was, like I said, this was the absolutely enormous mansion. The washer and dryer was in a closet in the upstairs, and not even like an accordion door closet where you could like open it up all the way, but it was like the kind that slides half one way or half the other way. So if you wanted to put your clothes from the washer to the dryer, you had to slide one half, take clothes out, slide the other half, throw them in, slide the other half back, get more clothes out, slide the other half back, open again, and go back and forth. There was no way to smoothly. So it just wasn't frequently used in the manner that we were using it. So, but it was, the owner was very proactive. He lived nearby and came over and fixed some things that we were having issues with. So I'm not trying to complain. It was a very beautiful house, and we had a very nice time. And we went on the Warner Brothers studio tour, and so among many things, I saw a lot of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon paraphernalia.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. But we had a great time. Everybody got along pretty well. So,
but rather like Brienne's stay at the Inn at the Crossroads, kind of 4 stars roughly.
no one did bite my cheek off.
Well,
so that was my trip.
I tell you what, that is interesting. I will give you that. I didn't think you were going to interest me, but you have, because that is fascinating. to look so good but not be it's very Los Angeles for it to just be all facade and not really.
It was very much like we're on a movie set. How about you? You were also away.
I was.
So how was your trip?
My trip was very nice. We had a lovely time. We went to Costa Rica, which is in Central America, south of here. Made me realize something that I'd forgotten: how big the world is. Because I have I mean, that I shouldn't have forgotten that. But I have a very good sense of the east-west size of the world.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
But
you traveled that a good bit. But I've lost sense of the north-southness. I mean, I realize it's pretty much spherical, so it's about the same. But because I don't do it, I don't think about it. But I'm from the north of England, and I think of Raleigh as being way, way south, like practically the equator. Yeah. But we flew 4+ hours almost due south, and we still didn't get anywhere near the equator. It was still miles and miles from the equator. So it's a big old world we live in, is what I'm saying. It is. Yeah, when you put it in that perspective, it really is.
Yeah. But we had a lovely time. We saw a sign that said, "Crocodiles, do not swim, do not feed." And I couldn't help but ask myself, is that 2 rules or just 1 rule being reinforced?
Yeah. If you swim, you will feed.
Exactly. We went on a tour of a coffee plantation, which is very interesting. And it was the 4 of us and another random couple were on the tour with us. And we got chatting to them. And me and the guy lived on the same street.
Wow.
How about that?
Really?
Small world, huh?
You mean in England?
In England,
Not on
yeah.
your street currently.
Not currently, no. In fact, not at the same time. He moved onto that street about 6 months after I moved off it.
That is pretty remarkable, though. I mean, think
quite
about the odds of that.
Yeah, it's quite a long street, but not like, not miles and miles. It's just,
Well, yeah. I mean, even if someone was from the same town as you in Costa Rica, that you met while you were in Costa Rica would be a pretty amazing thing. But to live on the same street.
Right. He said, I'm from Sheffield. I said, I'm Sheffield boy myself, my alma mater. And so we talked a little bit. And I didn't remember the name of the street. I said, I lived in Walkley, down one of the really steep streets off the main road. He said, oh, I lived on Cundy Street. And I was like, that's the one. So, very small.
Wow.
One.
Yeah.
And you've been to Hawaii, right?
I have, yes.
I've never been to Hawaii, but I met a lady on the beach, and I asked her where she was from, and she said she was from Arizona. And she asked me where I was from, and I gave my usual answer. You're not going to believe this because of my accent, but I'm from North Carolina. And she said, whoa, God, you've come a long way. And I was like, it doesn't seem that much further than Arizona. But I didn't say that, but I looked a little bit puzzled. She was like, did you have to transfer through Los Angeles? I was like, and then I really did look puzzled at this point. She went, oh, wait, we're not in Hawaii. We're in Costa Rica. And she thought she was in Hawaii, just momentarily. She was having a brain fart.
Right.
But the funny thing was, my travel companions have also been to Hawaii, and they had just made the comment that it felt like Hawaii. The sands...
Really?
The sands were black and volcanic, and there was lava flows going into the sea around us. And there were palm trees, and Pacific Ocean was very nice there. And she made this mistake, and I was like, they must be telling the truth, or they just got together with her to plan it. Let's get down to business. How did we leave Cersei Lannister? Last we saw of Cersei, she was, as usual, quite busy. She was less than mournful over the death of Lord Giles Rosby. She bullied Grand Maester Pycelle into admitting that he'd provided Margaery with moon tea on many occasions. She told Orton Merryweather she was raising him up to be Hand of the King. She watched as Qyburn tortured the Blue Bard into singing the songs they wanted regarding Margaery's infidelities and naming many names of suitors. Finally, she reaffirmed Osney Kettleblack's commitment to admitting to his relations with not only Margaery, but also two of her three cousins by bedding him. That's Cersei bedding Osney.
Right.
Sentence went on such a long time, just to connect the dots a little bit there. All right, Mackelly, why don't we give a summary of this one?
All right, well, Queen Cersei's plan is coming together well. In front of a full court in the throne room, Cersei feigns dismay and tells the septa representing the High Septon that the High Septon must release Margaery and her three cousins. They are no doubt innocent of the charges.
Fornication and conspiracy to commit high treason for Megha and Eleanor, the shame of hiding it for Alla, and throwing adultery and treason for Margaery. The crowd begins to buzz when it's revealed that it was Sir Osney Kettleblack who brought about these charges.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. A smattering of lords and ladies begin to funnel out of the gallery, possibly for fear of guilt by association. The septa continues. None of the girls have their maidenhead intact. Secretly, Cersei hopes they enjoyed all those long horseback rides.
The crowd erupts when Grand Maester Pycelle announced that he's provided Margaery with moon tea on multiple occasions. Cersei allows the sweet sounds of shock and outrage to wash over her for a bit before drawing the court session to a close. The little queen is done, and so is Maggie's prophecy. No younger queen will remove Cersei, and if that prophecy can fail, so can the rest.
Moraine Waters is dispatched to get the new Dromans out on the water to stop Mace Tyrell from storming the city when he learns of the news, and to remind the small folk who's in charge, as they will be in an uproar over the news. They love Margaery Tyrell. Cersei also learns that the High Septon hopes to try Margaery through the faith, a fact Cersei plans to keep in mind.
Cersei visits King Tommen, who is playing with his kittens. She has her son sign a stack of blank warrants. She fills in the names of those accused of fornicating with Margaery and hands them to Sir Osfryd Kettleblack, commander of her Goldcloaks. He's instructed to ensure his Goldcloaks treat the Red Wine twins gently and confine them to comfy tower cells. They must be found innocent. It's the dungeons for the rest of them.
Cersei and Taena make their way to the Great Sept of Baelor. A mob has formed in front of the Sept, shouting for Margaery to be released. Cersei realizes she hadn't thought through how the small folk might react to Margaery's arrest. However, the crowd parts peacefully for the women as they enter the building. The plan is for Cersei to talk to Margaery, while Taena talks to the cousins, specifically to convince Alla to go along with their story of her knowing but disapproving of the other girls' actions.
The High Septon gives the women leave to speak with the Tyrells, but asks Cersei to come to him afterwards so that they may pray together. Cersei finds Margaery in a tower cell shivering in a rough-spun shift. Margaery fears for her cousins. Cersei informs her that they are being charged with the same crimes as Margaery. Margaery cannot believe it. They are all but children. She begs Cersei to free them, but Cersei explains that she cannot. There will be a trial, but Cersei is sure that the accused men will testify and clear Margaery's name. Otherwise, Margaery can request a trial by combat.
Margaery mulls over the trial by combat idea. With Loras injured, she wants her brother Garland to champion her. Cersei explains that as queen, the champion must be from the Kingsguard, leaving only Osmond Kettleblack, Meryn Trant, and Boris Blunt. Margaery's suspicions begin to rise. Cersei would like that, wouldn't she? Osney would cut Meryn Trant or Boris Blunt to pieces. She commands that Cersei leave, calling her a vile, scheming, evil bitch.
As she leaves, Cersei lets it slip the Grand Maester Pycelle has admitted to providing the moon tea, and that the Blue Bard has weaved a tale for which Margaery should begin to pray for mercy and forgiveness. Next stop is deep under the Sept, where the High Septon keeps his chambers. The High Septon states in no uncertain terms that Margaery is guilty. Her maidenhead is broken, she's killed her unborn child with moon tea, and she and her cousins have lain with many men. Cersei feigns sadness and suggests that the Faith conduct the trial, as Tommen and his laws could not be impartial.
The High Septon agrees. Cersei reminds him of the possibility of trial by combat, and the stipulation that her champion be of the Kingsguard. With that, she must retire to the Red Keep. She'll take Sir Osney Kettleblack with her, as the small council will want to interrogate him themselves. A simple no is his response. The word unsettles Cersei. He takes her to see Sir Osney, who is hung naked from the ceiling by chains, with clear marks of many whippings.
Cersei is shocked. The man came to you of his own free will to confess. The High Septon acknowledges that. However, he's never seen a man so pleased to be guilty of such crimes. Therefore, they dug a little deeper after the truth. The more they dug, the more the story changed. Now he claims to have never touched Margaery. Osney stirs and sees Cersei. He croaks that she's the queen he bedded and killed the previous High Septon for.
Uh-oh. With that, Cersei spins and runs. As she does, she thinks of Taena. If they detain and whip her, she will be Cersei's downfall. She knows all. Cersei gives it a good try, but eventually is corralled by a gang of septas and dragged to her own tower cell. She's stripped naked and woken every hour and asked if she'd like to confess her sins now. As the time passes, Cersei can't understand where her guards are. She hears shouts from outside, but they are for Margaery.
As the second day of confinement begins, Qyburn enters the chamber. The ex-maester bears much news. She is to be tried alongside Margaery for murder, treason and fornication. The king is safe but lonely. The Blue Bard has been delivered to the Faith and is still singing their tune about Margaery. Grand Maester Pycelle and Harys Swift currently run the realm. They've ousted Osfryd Kettleblack as the commander of the Goldcloaks, as well as Qyburn from the small council. Her uncle Kevin has been asked to resume the regency, but he must hurry as 2 Tyrell armies march on the city from the north and south.
Furthermore, The Merryweathers have fled the city for Longtable, and Arain Waters has dropped oars and taken the entire royal fleet to sea. In all the awful news, there was one bright spot. Taena wasn't detained. Cersei feels lost, however, but Qyburn offers hope. Her undefeatable champion is ready to defend her honor. But the man is not of the Kingsguard, so he is of no use to her.
Cersei knows she stands no chance at trial, so it must be combat. She asks Qyburn to send a letter to Jaime, begging him to return and save her. Qyburn reminds her that Jaime has no sword hand. Cersei doesn't care. Jaime will not lose, not with her life at stake. If he were to, then they would go out together as they once came into this world.
Good stuff.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, like the culmination of everything that Cersei's been, the Cersei arc has been heading towards.
Exactly.
And I mean, we knew, but as we read it, we could see it coming too. Not just because we knew. It's like everything she was doing, and the absence of Taena from the arrest just gives you that one extra thing of, we warned you, lady.
All right.
Over and over.
Yeah.
We wanted you to get your comeuppance, but we warned you.
We warned you it was coming. Flying too close to the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the chapter starts out with lords and ladies sneaking out of the throne room after the charges against Margaery and her cousins were revealed. And, I'm imagining that they're all thinking, well, I've hung out with Margaery. Am I going to get roped into this?
Yeah, that's a good point. I also thought there was some of it might be like, let's rush off and tell our friends what we've just heard. That
gossip.
Might be exactly. Oh boy, I know court is usually boring, but let me tell you,
not this time.
Plus, the other thing I thought about was just, like you said, the guilt by association, but also just the frisson of violence in the air in that courtroom as all this came to light would have got me running for the door. Just like, who knows who's going to lash out about this at this point?
Right,
it could be anyone, and it could be catastrophic.
Yeah. I wonder how many blazed paths right out of King's Landing.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, the Merryweathers certainly did they did it later, but they did it for greater reasons, it seems.
Yes, yeah. It's not a bad idea to blaze a path out of King's Landing. Cersei mentions to, someone within her small council that she has really no plans of recapturing those who left because fleeing is guilt enough, and they don't even have to bother to, to torture them into admitting anything.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
Yeah, so I wonder how they're going to react now that the table's turned mid-chapter, because the chapter certainly starts with Margaery on the downswing and Cersei on the up. But certainly Cersei at least joins Margaery by the end. But the interesting thing about it is, I mean, mostly it's like they're both in terrible trouble now because some of what's aimed at Margaery appears to be potentially true. But the one guy who came and confessed loudly now has recanted everything he said, and that Margaery has been framed. And so the thing is, every other piece of evidence against her now gets looked at in a different light,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And
he's now pointed the finger to Cersei.
Right, exactly.
Away from Margaery.
Right. She was framed by Cersei. So anyone who says anything now implicating Margaery in anything is liable to get tortured until they change their story.
Right.
I don't think the Blue Bard is going to hold up. I think if he gets tortured enough, he's going to change his tune. And now all of those guys who were told they would get clemency, well, they weren't told, but the plan was to offer the Zalabarzos of this world clemency if they confessed. Well, they don't need to now. They hold out with the truth at this point.
Yes, that is a problem. That's a problem with the plan now.
Yeah.
Fly in the ointment.
Yeah, I mean, why would you? If Zalabar so says, "I've never slept with Margaery," what are you talking about? That's crazy. Why would you torture him now? You can't really suspect him. Well, you can because they've done this gruesome inspection of her and concluded that she has lost her maidenhood, which is
Right.
entirely unreliable and sickening as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And so they may torture them to try and get to the bottom of it, but at the same time, like, there's nothing in it for him to admitting it anymore. If the weight of evidence was overwhelming, and someone came to you and said, "If you confess, we'll get you out of here," you might do it. But if none of that happens, you're going to be like, "Look, you're really hurting me now, but I still didn't sleep with her."
Yeah, wait till they get a load of Sir Osney. If they see what he's looking like now, they really might change their tune. I've never or stick to their original tune. I've never seen her. I've never been with her. But yeah, about the whole Margaery and her cousins having lost their maidenhead, Cersei, she tosses it in there rather smoothly and quite innocently. But she can't be. She's a maid. So innocently. But everybody knows, in this era, any maester would be able to tell you that highborn girls are likely to lose their maidenhead from riding as much as from having sexual intercourse. So,
yeah. But of course, the damning part is that Grand Maester Pycelle follows up with, "And I've provided her with moon tea," and you don't need that after riding a horse.
Yes. And that, we never got to hear the end of his sentence last Cersei chapter when he said, "I provide her moon tea for."
Right.
He might have said for after she's had sexual relations with somebody. Or he might have said for some other reason that we never got to know. But whatever that reason was, he has changed his version of that this time around because he says she is not, straight up says, she is not a maiden. I have provided her moon tea on many occasions.
Yes. However, this is Grand Maester Pycelle. And if the wind changes and this comes to trial, he might very well change that story one more time.
That's true.
He might finish that sentence.
Yeah, especially if Cersei's not in the position to to exact revenge or whatever.
Exactly. And he knows, if he sees all of what we see, he knows that he has the power to decide this in his hands. If he sticks with Cersei's story, then Margaery is guilty. And Cersei, guilty of some things, but her framing had an element of truth to it. But if he changes his story back to, "I was providing it to her for headaches,"
right,
then Cersei is doomed. Absolutely doomed.
Right. Yeah. So he holds the cards sort of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now.
And she hasn't been very nice to him for quite a long time.
I'd say she's quite demeaning and just downright awful to him.
She may regret.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But there was a small detail last Cersei chapter that comes into a different light in this chapter when Tommen says that he won't see Margaery today because she and her cousins are preparing for the Maiden's Day ritual. And in this chapter, I can't remember if she thinks it or says it. She might say it out loud, actually, that they profane the Maiden's Day holy rites to hide their shame. So, it's just one more thing that was like thrown in last chapter that seemed rather superfluous. And now we're seeing, oh, yeah, okay. So that actually, this Maiden's Day thing, which we'd never really heard of before, now all of a sudden it takes on a little bit of life there.
Yeah, because of course, to the faith, clearly they don't like the moon tea being used to prevent issue. They don't love the adultery, but the blasphemy of pretending to be a maiden when you're not, for their holy rites, that's the one that's going to get them up in arms.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So there's an interesting sort of insight into Cersei's psyche in this one, in that when she sits back in her moment of triumph, when Margaery is brought low and she's still, and the trap hasn't been sprung on her, she thinks, that she's defeated Maggie the Frog's prophecy, which, it's. I always felt that her main focus here was just bringing Margaery down because she didn't like Margaery, but it isn't. It's still, that prophecy is still eating away at her, and so she's bringing Margaery down because she's that young queen, and that makes sense because I often forget why there's any real animosity between Cersei and Margaery. She's young and pretty and all those things, and that could make you jealous, but in actual fact, she's a nice kid who's going to be a nice wife to your son,
Yeah, right.
She's a Tyrell.
Yeah, and that coin in Rugen's chamber with the Tyrell
that's
gold.
True. Yeah.
That, I'm sure that it plays a part as well. I think she also doesn't like the fact that Margaery is also queen, and she's putting ideas in Tommen's head that he should be more interested in ruling, and Cersei wants her moment to shine. But I don't know if that's enough that Cersei would go through all of this to tear her down to this level.
Yeah. But the problem is, of course, is that it didn't say Marjorie's going to knock you off your perch. It says the young queen will. I mean, Tommen's going to get married to someone.
I was just about to say that. I'm not sure why she's so confident that Maggie's prophecy has been thwarted. She's got to assume that Tommen's going to marry again. Maybe the plan is handpick the woman and make sure that she doesn't fit the description. The younger, more beautiful picks, Olenna Tyrell or someone.
I got a guarantee for you, Cersei Lannister. She's the one.
She's the one, right?
She marries her own son. Yes.
I mean, what if Myrcella was the younger, more beautiful queen that was to replace her?
There you go. That could be true. Interesting.
Yeah.
So Arain Waters launches the new fleet to both remind the small folk of the crown's strength and to stop the Tyrells getting across the river. You have a question about this? Because to me, it makes perfect sense,
Yeah, no, my question is, it's a good idea at face value. And I think you're right, it does make perfect sense. But did Arain see the trouble ahead? Did he realize that if Cersei goes down, it'd be easier to sail away? Or was he legitimately trying to offer up what he thought was a good idea? Because it could be that he just thought, no, this would be a good idea. I'll prevent the Tyrell army from getting across the Blackwater. And then when things went really south with Cersei, he thought, I think I'm just going to head out to sea now, he could have thought, this is getting really really troublesome here in the city. I'm going to get out to sea. We'll just see what happens from there. I don't know.
My position rather depended on Cersei being in charge. I'll hightail it out of here.
Yes. I had no business being in the role that I'm in anyway. So
So King's Landing is up in arms about the fact that the charges have been brought to Margaery, but not perhaps to the extent you might have expected. Not exactly a riot. I mean, Cersei was able to walk through with unmolested to get to the High Septon. Yeah,
it's just a small mob. It was like, I think Osford said there was about 100 people or so out in front of the Sept. So that's not uncontrollable. They have many more than that in gold cloaks. So.
Yeah.
But it's no shock that Cersei didn't factor in what the small folk, how they would react. I mean, she never considers the small folk in any thought or decision that she makes.
Very true. Very true.
But Cersei, speaking of mobs, Cersei does think of the irony of how the crowd is currently shouting down the High Septon and is very similar to the crowd that lifted him up to the Crystal Crown. And what she's referring to is when the most devout was really close to selecting Lucien, who was actually Lucien Frey in a previous point in his life, the Sparrows burst into the Sept and forced them to vote their High Sparrow at Axe Point. So that's what she was referring to there.
Cersei explains why she's not concerned if Margaery chooses trial by combat. In fact, because she would really like this to happen in order to prove Margaery's innocence. Because if you remember, Cersei checked with Osmund Kettleblack if his younger brother Osney Kettleblack would be able to beat Boris Blunt in a fight, and Osmund had zero doubt that Osney would win that fight. And that is exactly Cersei's plan. And Margaery's smart to sniff it out that that's exactly what her plan is.
And she feels the same way because she says, "You basically, when Cersei lays it out for her, there's really only three options. Osmond Kettleblack, Osney's older brother, Meryn Trant, who she says is old and slow, and Boris Blunt, who she says is a coward, and that Osney would tear Meryn Trant or Boris Blunt apart." Yep. So she also believes that. Yeah. And Cersei tells Taena not to even worry about Meryn Trant because Meryn Trant's not been feeling well lately, or at least I'm going to tell him that he has not been feeling well lately. This whole you have to be in a Kingsguard to defend the queen was not the case against Tyrion because she had the Mountain defend her against Tyrion and who turned out to be Oberyn Martell.
But I will say that's different here because the Mountain was acting for the prosecution there. Here, the Kingsguard would be acting for the defense.
So you think it's only in the defense, not
right? Okay. Because the Crown can choose whoever they want to act as their prosecuting champion.
Right.
But only the Kingsguard can defend the royal family. I think that's the gist of it.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. Yeah. Good point.
Because if the Crown brought charges against a random person up in the north, that person couldn't say, well, a divine trial by champion against one of the Kingsguard. Can you send a pigeon on a 2-month round trip and have him come back here, please?
Yeah, that makes some sense. I see your point. Mm-hmm. But as promised, we mentioned this in spoilers. It's only as promised to those who have access to our spoilers discussion. But we get the Margaery calling Cersei a vile, scheming, evil bitch. Mm-hmm. Which I mentioned, I think it was last Cersei episode in spoilers.
With relish, can I say?
Yes.
Finally, someone calls her on these things.
Right. Finally, we see Margaery drop the innocent courtesy and, show some thorns, some Tyrell thorns.
Yeah. It's interesting that Cersei is the one who informs Margaery of the both the Moon Tea thing and also the Blue Bard's revelations. I would have thought that either the Faith would have already told her that, or they would very carefully control the meeting to parcel out when Margaery hears these things. Or maybe they just don't care. Maybe they think they've got them both banged to rights. It doesn't matter what they hear now.
Yeah. Okay. So about that, because I have a thought on the Moon Tea and the Blue Bard, but what you just said is something that I had been wondering about. So when Cersei and Taena both get to the Sept and they talk to the High Septon and he says, yeah, go visit your people. Cersei, come meet up with me later so we can pray together. Did he know at that point he was setting her up for a trap, do you think? Or do you think maybe Osney Kettleblack hadn't confessed yet? Sometime when Cersei was talking to Margaery, Osney confessed to Cersei's crimes.
Oh, I see. Which would explain why they were kind of blasé about her visiting Margaery. But yeah, I thought from the moment she walked in there, the High Septon had the trap ready for her and just didn't care.
Yeah. So he was kind of just playing with her a little bit there. Like, oh, sure. Go visit Margaery. Take as much time as you want. Mm-hmm. Then come see me. We'll pray.
Yeah. That's how I thought it was, yeah.
So now back to the Moon Tea and Blue Bard bit. I'm just wondering what Margaery's thoughts were as she was hearing this. Because if the Moon Tea is true, for purposes suggested, or not even for the purposes suggested, that's pretty terrifying for Margaery, right? She's thinking, oh, I have asked Pycelle for Moon Tea. This is going to be terrible. This is going to blow up my face. If it's not true at all, then Margaery must be thinking, what? What are you talking about? I've
Yeah.
never asked for moon tea from anybody. I would ask my own maester for moon tea, not Grand Maester Pycelle.
That's true. But actually, that is true. I hadn't thought about that. It sort of proves the truth of this, because if it was a complete lie, then Cersei would not share that information with Margaery to give her time to make the defense that you just made, which was excellent, by the way. Well done.
Oh, thank you. I've had more time than she has to think about it.
But exactly. But now she's got until the trial to think about it for herself. Whereas if at trial Grand Maester Pycelle came up and lied against Margaery, she'd be like, wait, what? That's not true.
I have my own maester. Why would I go to you?
But she might not have come up with that off the cuff, whereas with time to plan it. So I think Cersei was telling her because Cersei knows it to be true.
Yeah, could be. Maybe.
But you're right, it still gives Margaery time to sort of like, well, I got to think about how to explain that away, don't I?
Right. But the Blue Bard thing, we know that Cersei made convinced in quotes she and Qyburn convinced the Blue Bard in quotes to
very convincing.
Say the things. Yes. So she must be thinking, because the way Cersei lays it out is, and the Blue Bard is talking, and the things that he's saying, you better start praying to the gods for forgiveness and mercy. And she must be thinking, what did he say? I have no idea. What could he possibly have said? He played us some songs. But she is also starting to figure out that Cersei is vile, scheming, and evil. So probably figures you've convinced him and coerced him into saying something.
Yes, that would be my logical conclusion as well. But that is also true, because that is right there in that meeting. Cersei was still behaving like she cared. Like, and when she was talking about the trial by combat, it wasn't, you're going to lose in a trial by combat. It was like, the Kingsguard will protect you. And only Margaery figures it out that this is a plot against her as well. But you're right. The Blue Bard thing is absolutely, here's Cersei's true nature coming out. Because there's no way the Blue Bard would tell a lie. Well, unless it's true, there's no way the Blue Bard would tell this lie unless he'd been tortured by who else but Cersei.
Right. Yeah. So that was what was going through my head when I was reading that. I wish I was in Marjorie's head right now. I would love to know what she's thinking.
Yeah. The High Septon doesn't wait for the trial before deciding the innocence and guilt, clearly, because Cersei says maybe she's innocent, and High Septon says she's not. So he's not waiting for the evidence. He's got enough. I mean, the lack of a maidenhead, she drank the moon tea, and now many men admitting to carnal knowledge. I don't know. I still think he should have a bit more of an open mind, because, again, that prime witness was lying through his teeth.
That's right. So he knows this when he's talking to Cersei, but yet he doesn't even acknowledge the possibility that maybe Margaery is innocent. And I thought that was odd. And here we find ourselves 2 chapters in a row with trial discussion. The previous one being Brienne at Hollow Hill with the Brotherhood Without Banners. And once again, it feels like we're not getting a fair trial. The High Septon should also be aware that you could lose your maidenhead due to horseback riding.
Mackelly, you may have come to the wrong books for a fair trial. Just
it's true.
FYI.
I need to pick up John Grisham or something.
Exactly. But I also think some of it is he's still toying with Cersei like a cat with a mouse.
That could be, yeah. That could
he's trying to convince her, we got her, you and me.
Yes, until she says, I'm going to take Sir Osney with me. And he says, no.
Yeah. So Cersei makes the logical point that the Faith should try Margaery because the crown couldn't be impartial. I'm not sure it's a terribly good idea, though.
No, and it's a little bit surprising, only a little bit, in the fact that she's willing to give up the control of.
But she keeps
making
giving up.
Sure, this goes this way, the way she wants.
Right. She keeps on giving up control to the faith. And
Yes.
by the end of this chapter, she's going to begin to see the folly of her ways, I feel.
Right. Yeah. Now I get it. If you let the faith try her, you're further separating yourself from a guilty verdict. You can
True.
continue to pretend to be outraged and helping when really, doing the exact opposite. But like you said, again, she's giving up more power to the faith without thinking through the consequences. They're already becoming armed more and more daily, and now they're deciding the fate of a queen.
Yeah,
it's a slippery slope.
So, yeah, I think she judges people by her own character, because she only knows her own character. She doesn't understand people who are different. She did the High Septon a huge favour with the rearming of the Faith Militant, and she thinks that has made him her man for good. She expects that.
Yeah.
She thinks that he would never deviate from that, having been done this one favour. Cersei Lannister, who never pays her debts, has given you something that you wanted. She's going to call that favour in, and you're going to pay it for the rest of your life. Right. But he is not that, and that's what she completely just misunderstands.
Absolutely, that is not how that went at all.
Mm-hmm. So the scene with Osney Kettleblack is gruesome, of course, because he's been brutally tortured by the faith. So sometimes I think of this new High Septon, the High Sparrow, if you will, as being a very devout and kindly man, but he isn't.
No.
He's
even Cersei says, "I thought you preached the mother's mercy," and he said, "Oh, he'll get that in his afterlife, but right now he's gonna be scourged."
I will say, I think it was a terrible miscalculation for them to send Osney with a big smile on his face to do this.
Yeah, they should have practiced a few times.
Yeah. A bit of sackcloth and ashes. Oh, I'm so sorry, I've done a terrible thing.
Right. Yeah.
Not woo. Should see what I did.
So, yeah. Well, first of all, like you said earlier, the plan was that the other accusers were going to see Osney as an example of the leniency if you confess. That's out the window if they get a look at him. Cersei's promises.
What exactly do I have to do to avoid that? Because that's what I'll do.
Cersei's promises couldn't have been less kept. Not only is he not looking like he's about to be sent to the wall, because the High Septon says the punishment for treason is death. And not only is he not going to return as her concubine, he's pegged for death. So, and we see as the chapter ends that she's helpless to stop it, and there's nobody else in power who knows that it's a false story. The Merryweathers are the only other people who knew, and they fled. Right.
Cersei's best chance of survival, I mean, just coming back to Cersei, is getting this undefeatable champion to be made a Kingsguard to defend her in a trial by combat. But how does she affect that? She can't.
Yeah.
She can't make that happen. If she had her freedom, she could make that happen for sure.
Yeah, that's I'm a little bit surprised that she was so quick to roll over on that, and she was like, "Oh, I can't use them. There's no space on the small council. I mean, on the Kingsguard. For one thing, it's not unlike her to bump someone off. So Loras is near death, as we've been told. Someone go put a pillow over his face.
Right, but the real problem there is, even if she did that, she's not going to have any influence on who the next person is, unless Tommen comes to visit and she can get Tommen to understand the importance of this. Maybe she could do that.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, even Qyburn's not on the small council anymore.
And Qyburn's not. I was going to say the same thing. Qyburn's off the small council, so he doesn't have the king's ear. And is the small council going to let Qyburn have a little conversation with Tommen? Heck no. Not this side of the grave.
Yeah. Right. Well, but so Osney, he's whipped, and he admits that he lied about his carnal knowledge of Margaery, admits that he had carnal knowledge of the Queen of Queen Cersei in the past. But that, I don't think, is where the issue is, because she's a widow. She's not. They could have carnal knowledge. I don't think that's illegal in the eyes of the faith. The problem, what gets him and her into the biggest trouble is that she hired him to kill the previous High Septon.
Yeah, I would be quite mad at him if I was Cersei, because I'm like, look, you went in with a stupid smile on your face. We should have talked about that. That was my bad. But when you got tortured, why didn't you just admit to the lie?
Right. Why are you throwing in other details?
Exactly. Where's that coming from? They're not asking that question.
Right. Did you kill the previous High Septon? No, that's not the question they're asking.
Just a standard question. We always ask it. Moving on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we finally see what was meant in previous chapters when she said, "You did me valiant service and you had your reward." Now we finally see that valiant service was killing the High Septon on her behalf.
Right, yeah. You've told me that in spoilers a couple of times, so I kept on thinking it was common knowledge. But nah, you're right. This is
right.
This is
actually
the truth.
I had to think about that not too long before we recorded. I was like, oh, I think this is this is when it's finally divulged, even though we've talked about it in spoilers. Spoilers is always causing trouble in that way.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's all much of a muchness. So Cersei hears shouts from below, but they're for Margaery, not for her. And I do think, I will say, first of all, you're not very nice, and she is. She's going to get more shouts than you. But the other thing is, she might think maybe they don't know. Marjorie's arrest was kind of common knowledge.
It was publicly announced.
Exactly. Right. It could be under wraps that you're being held. So, I would be like, if you knew I was here, you'd be crying my name too.
I'm arrested too. I'm also a queen. But then we get a flurry of news from Qyburn. We'll just take them one at a time, I guess.
Yeah, first of all, the realm is being run by Harris Swift and Grand Maester Pycelle, who
goodness.
Yeah, well, it's not ideal, but with Orton Merryweather hightailing it, which is another thing he told her, and Orain Waters heading for the waters. There's nobody left on the small castle apart from Qyburn, who the other two ousted like day one.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, so apparently the news of Orton Merryweather being raised to Hand of the King was never conveyed to anyone.
Right.
And Orton doesn't seem to be too upset about it as he fled. You know,
I'm just going back home to get my best clothes.
Right. Speaking of that, yes, that's one of the things that Qyburn says is Taena and Orton Merryweather have fled King's Landing for Long Table.
Just a question about that. Did he actually say that Taena went, or did he just say the Merryweathers?
Merryweathers. He said the Merryweathers.
He did say it plurally, but and their son hasn't been in town, so by implication it is Orton and Taena, yeah?
Yes, their son Russell. I think that was a conversation in this chapter between Cersei and Taena.
About bringing him to King's Landing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So now here's my question about that. And the answer is probably both. But did they do it to protect Cersei or to distance themselves from the trouble that Cersei's now in?
I have to say, okay, if you want me to say both, I'll say both. But what I actually think is that this is all a bit surprising because I don't quite understand. Taena is now, almost as much as Grand Maester Pycelle, the puppet master. She has the fate of all in her hands too, just as Grand Maester Pycelle does. And to flee the scene at this point seems surprising for someone who seemed to me to be a bit of a grifter, a bit of a slippery pole climber. To hightail it at this point seems a bit strange. Safer, certainly safer.
It's definitely safer.
Yes, I'll give you that.
Maybe Orton said, "I'm going, and you can stay if you want." And she said, "Okay, I'll go too." Maybe, I don't know.
But she's had her head in a lion's mouth this whole book, and to run when the tables get turned on Cersei seems strange to me.
Yeah, although I don't know how well she'd hold up to torture. Then we would really get to test her loyalty that we've been wondering.
Well, I mean, but I mean. You don't need to torture me. I'll tell you everything. Ask me questions and I will tell you everything I know. Why would you torture someone?
Well, true. If she's willing to, as long as she doesn't do it too willingly, like Osney.
Well, okay, I wouldn't go rushing up there. Whoa, have I got a story for you? You know,
Right. She could be Margaery's salvation in this situation.
she absolutely could. And this is the thing, you see, all the way through, I've thought she always was Margaery's salvation because she was Margaery's spy in the Cersei camp. But that's not very helpful if she is.
No, she could have finished off Cersei
Exactly.
and saved Margaery.
Where are you, Chief Witness? Oh, back at Long Table. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Real helpful.
Right. The Blue Bard is still singing the song that Qyburn and Cersei taught him to sing. Now, as we've said already, I don't think this can hold up to more torture because, especially if I'm a torturer, I feed him different directions. Like, I'll say, you know, hey, we've heard that Margaery sleeps with everyone, including you. Is that true? Yes, it is true. Yeah. And then tie the thumb screws on a little bit more. But then I also say, but then we found out that somebody was lying about this. Oh, yes, that is true. You know, it's going to be hard to get the truth out of him, but I think he'll change his story pretty quickly if the questioner leads him in the right direction.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It really does. Yeah. If they're a good torturer, they could get the truth out possibly. At this point, I'm thinking Qyburn's torture is worse than what the High Septon has been subjecting him to.
Possibly. And so, but the thing is, for anyone, I mean, God, the poor guy, you know, he's in that awful situation.
Don't you think that the faith would have questions just by looking at him? He's a mess.
Well, that's a very good point. Yes.
Like, so, did you tell the truth of your own accord? Yes. Did you? You're missing digits. You're missing your nipples. I think he's missing one eye at this point.
Oh, that Margaery, she likes it rough.
Right.
But I'm putting in mind of when in the UK they first decided to tape record all police interviews. A comedy show put a confession tape together from the interviews, but the clock behind kept changing, jumping back and forth, and how beaten up the guy was kept jumping back and forth as well, just splicing individual words until he confessed to saying. That's how the Blue Bard looks.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so Qyburn's off the small council. Osford Kettleblack has been removed as commander of the Gold Cloaks. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, because it doesn't. It seems kind of superfluous. Like, doesn't really fit with everything else that's going on. But
right,
possibly to remove any taint from Osney, you know.
Right, but Osmond is still a Kingsguard.
He is, right? Well, I guess yes, you're right. I wonder if the difference is Kingsguard are supposed to serve for life, and Gold Cloaks can be removed. So they're like, well, we can get rid of one of the two.
I wonder how Osmond feels with seeing one of his brothers arrested and tortured by the Faith, and his other one ousted from the job for being the brother of the one who's been arrested by the Faith. Like, he can't feel warm fuzzy.
Yeah, rough day for you guys, huh?
Yeah. And then Kevin has been sent for to take over the Regency, which is really, I mean, that is one that you've told me about in spoilers, but it's sort of like, it's the one that just never stuck. Now I believe it. I've read it in the book. I believed you, kind of.
Well, so the question is, could he right some of the mess that she's made? There's certain things he could do. He could reinstitute payments to the Iron Bank, get them off the crown's back, and everyone else in Westeros is back. He could bring in higher caliber minds on the small council than the smallest council that Cersei's been working with. But there are some things that are too late. Rearming the Faith, I don't think you can put that toothpaste back in the tube. And, you know, and now here's Cersei allowing the Faith to try Margaery and now herself.
Yeah.
Very much reminiscent of Sansa, you know, getting herself stuck in her own trap when she went and told Cersei what Ned was thinking.
Yeah.
Now Cersei has got herself stuck in a trap that she created.
I will say, actually, that one thing that he could do is, well, I don't know if you can do this. That High Septon is not one to be toyed with or indeed convinced of anything other than his own thoughts. But
right.
I would be very tempted, if I was Kevin, to get Margaery out of there. Get Margaery out of that mess. She's key to the relationship with the Tyrells, which is key to the stability of the realm.
Yeah.
And clearly Cersei lied to get her into this pickle, get her out of this pickle, get Mace Tyrell back on the small council, and suddenly the realm looks a lot more stable. Leave Cersei to rot.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All those things. Yes to all those things. One other thing he unfortunately can't do is undo naming an untested bastard of Driftmark as Lord Admiral, because that guy already took off with the entire royal fleet. Can't undo that.
And trouble is coming from north and south as Mace Tyrell returns from the south and Randall Tarley from the north, descending on King's Landing to free their daughter / liege lady.
Right. Yeah, and the fleet was supposed to repel Mace's army coming from the south. Well, they're not there anymore. So are we setting ourselves up for an impending siege? Yeah. And like you said, can Kevin step in and stop it somehow, before things really become a mess?
Yeah. So Cersei's going to stand trial for this is what Qyburn tells her: murder, treason, and fornication. So the fornication, yes, Osney, although outside of wedlock, so not a big deal.
Oh, and Lancel.
Oh, Lancel contributed to that as well, and that was while she was married to Robert.
Yes, but that part's unclear.
Okay.
Right? Is it?
Murder is the previous High Septon.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Treason?
Also King Robert, possibly.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is that what the treason is? Because the treason wasn't clear to me. I thought the treason might refer to what she's trying to do to Margaery.
That could be as well. Yeah. Yeah. The fornication.
But you're right. Osney doesn't know any of that stuff, but Lancel does, and Lancel could certainly point to murder and treason.
And Lancel told the previous High Septon about these things, so it's very likely that he also told the current High Septon about these things. Mm-hmm. And he has his smoking gun might be bigger than Osney's or Taena's smoking gun.
Well, yes, I would say so. I mean, murder should be enough, presumably, but
regicide.
This is regicide, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And also, given the nature of the fornication, it also adds one more fuel to the fire of who the hell's kids are they?
Right. And I think that probably also is factored in with the whole treason, fornication, all that kind of stuff. Oh, man.
That's not good. That's not good.
But she knows she's not going to win a trial, and she doesn't expect her Uncle Kevin to intervene. So she figures trial by combat is my only choice. And this comes back to what you were saying earlier. She can't use Qyburn's unbeatable warrior because he's not on the Kingsguard, unless she were to make space on the Kingsguard by possibly putting Loras out of commission. And now you and I know that there is space on the Kingsguard. She just doesn't know it yet.
Yeah. Could she argue that... Oh, yes, there is. Could she argue that she doesn't have to be defended by the Kingsguard? As the queen, as the king's mother,
right,
she's no longer...
Dowager Queen.
Dowager Queen maybe doesn't have to... just a thought. All right, That was excellent, Mackelly. Why don't we do spoilers now? If you want to hear the spoilers, which are always fascinating, you just join us at the higher tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tiers, and you can have these. All right, thank you for that. Excellent spoilers. Do you have some background for us?
I do. I might need a drink of water here soon, as I feel like I've been talking a while. But so I thought for spoilers this week, we would just go over the men who have been accused of fornicating with the Tyrell women. I thought we'd go through some kind of how we've heard of them before and maybe some background info on their houses and such. So let's start with Hugh Clifton, who is part of Margaery's personal guard. Now, House Clifton is a Western house with fealty to the Farmans of Fair Isle. It's unclear which branch Hugh hails from. As a personal protector for a Tyrell, possibly there is a Clifton branch that's also in the Reach. There are no words or sigils given regarding House Clifton. Next up, we have Mark Mullendore. Now, we've heard of him a bit in the past. He was one of Brienne's false suitors. And she sought out and defeated him in the melee at Bitterbridge that she won to get on Renly's Rainbow Guard. He is one of the things most notable about him is that he had a pet monkey. But he fought for Stannis in the Battle of the Blackwater, where he lost part of his left arm and, unfortunately, the monkey in the battle. Mega Tyrell fancies him, according to Taena, and she believes that because Mega asked Margaery to help him procure a new monkey. Now, House Mullendore is a reach house sworn to the High Towers. Their seat is Uplands, and the head of the house is Lord Martin Mullendore. It's unclear Mark's relation to Lord Martin, but I can say the house sigil is a horizontal row of black and orange butterflies on a white field. Next up, we have Baynard Norcross, who is a knight, and he's obviously from House Norcross in the Reach, and they have fealty to the Tyrells. Their sigil is a black embattled cross on a white field. And then we have Sir Lambert Turnberry. He has the odd distinction of wearing a patch over his right eye, but there appears to be nothing wrong with his right eye. He just does it as sort of a fashion statement or maybe an icebreaker. I don't know exactly why he does it. House Turnberry is a Western house with fealty to the Lannisters. Their sigil is kind of complicated, but basically it's a white X with 5 strawberries dotting each arm of the X on a green and red patterned field.
Okay.
You got the X, you got the strawberries going across the X.
I can picture it.
The others accused, Jalabar Zoe, we've talked about him. He's been around, I think, since Game of Thrones. He's the exiled Summer Islander prince. Talad the Tall, we've seen him around for a long while, too. He's the hedge knight that Tyrion actually considered marrying off to Shae, and when he was going to end his relationship with Shae, before that all fell apart so quickly. Then we have Hamish the Harper. He's a musician that played at Joffrey and Marjorie's wedding. Obviously, we know the Redwine twins, Horus and Hobber, or Horror and Slobber, depending on who you are. And the Blue Bard, a.k.a. Watt. And we know all about him, unfortunately, the poor soul.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I got for you.
Thank you for that. That's fantastic. Comparison with the television show. So the charges against Margaery are for lying under oath when testifying as to Loras's innocence. Because again, this was all... Loras was arrested for homosexuality, and she denied it and said she knew nothing of it. But then the tables were turned on her when one of his former lovers admitted to Margaery being well aware of their relationship. She'd stumbled in on them. Olenna Tyrell is in town, and she tries to bully and bribe the High Septon to no avail. Because the whole Grand Maester Pycelle, Moonty, Margaery and Flagranti thing is completely dropped, there's no Osney Kettleblack. So nobody gets tortured to set the trap that ensnares Cersei. It's all Lancel. It's all Lancel's testimony brings her down.
Yeah, sure.
Loras, Margaery and Cersei are all held simultaneously. Septa Unella, as we mentioned, bothers Cersei. And in the show, it's an offer of water for a confession that she sort of tries to extract the confession.
Okay. Yeah.
So, so kept in the sort of general sense, but the details of why she's there, I mean, are different, you know. And Margaery in particular, it's a very small thing compared to what's going on around her, but she did unquestionably lie to the High Septon about not knowing or disbelieving.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I always, whenever we're talking about Loras and Lancel, I get them mixed up. Loras's proclivities.
Cersei and Sansa.
Yes. All right, pedantry. I'm going to disappoint our latest reviewer, but I don't have any pedantry in this one. Apart from the one that turned out to not be pedantry, because there's a third Tyrell brother that I completely forgot about. If it wasn't for that, there'd be some solid pedantry here.
Right.
So, news and notes.
Well, at this point, I'd like to say welcome to 2025 to all of our listeners.
How long have we been recording? Oh, to the listeners, I see.
Yes. Oh, I'm assuming at this point we've had a nice long break. We're recording this pre our holiday break, and I'm assuming, hopefully, we had a nice long break. But since we recorded this episode weeks before it's published, I didn't bother putting in any news because it'll probably be old news by the time we get there.
Yeah.
But we do have a really nice review. Would you like to read it? Since you've made reference to it.
I'll do it, yes. So this is from THA Synergy. Synergy? I'm going to go with Synergy.
Synergy, yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds
on
good.
podchaser.com. I've been listening to this podcast for a while now, and it's got me hooked, just like the books and TV show did. It's just two guys extensively, talking about the chapter at hand. Some background on one of my favourite parts, Pedantry Corner. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't deliver today. Where they take the liberty to be just as pedantic as everyone wants to be, but feel inhibited to do so. Let it out. Just let it out. Be pedantic.
Just shout it out. Yeah, get on our Discord community and let it all out.
I've had some contact with the creators, parentheses, actually one of them, because Simon is apparently digitally challenged or just hates social media.
Mostly the latter. I would say mostly the latter.
I mean, there's a bit of both. That's true. And that was good too. So thank you for carrying the flame for us there, Mackelly. I listen to this podcast on the way to and from work. To me, basically, this podcast feels like having two of my fellow nerd friends in car talking about one of my favourite subjects, with the only downside that I cannot join in on the conversation without feeling ignored because nobody listens to me or acknowledges my existence. Now I know how Rickon feels.
Yeah, well done.
Well played.
Got the Rickon joke in there.
So, long story short, great podcast. If you don't believe me, just try it out, or I'll cut off your manhood and feed it to the goats. Well, thank you so much, THA Synergy. I will try to do better. You join the Discord server, and I'll be your friend. I promise. And
yes, you're more proactive in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You can contribute to me. You can contribute your part of the conversation there.
Right. You know what the thing about listening to two nerd friends in the car reminded me of was when you and Ethan and I were playing that board game, and we were like, we need 4 tools. We need 4 tools. And Stacy comes to the room and says, well, I see 3.
I still remember that joke as well. She got us with a zinger there.
But thank you very much. Wonderful review. Thank you so much. And just quickly, with Chartable, which was a website that I had used to find podcast reviews, it's closed up shop. And so now I'm unable to see Apple Podcast reviews from around the globe. It's very challenging to do so anyway. So if you've written a review outside of the US that we've not read aloud on this show, please reach out to us because I would hate to leave you hanging out there.
Yeah, good spot, Mackelly. Well done. Thank you for that public announcement. All right, let's conclude this one. Cersei is in a bit of a pickle. I honestly can't see the way out, even though, spoilers, you kind of mentioned a few paths, because she's built a trap for herself, and now the evidence against her is pretty overwhelming.
Yes, she really has. This is all her own doing. Every bit of this she could have left well enough alone, and none of this would be happening. But she couldn't. And
but
here we are.
because she was eaten away by that bloody prophecy.
Yeah.
That's what led to it.
A lot of it is that. Absolutely, right.
But again, the stupidity of that is the fact that the prophecy doesn't mention Margaery. It just mentions a young queen. So she's always going to lose. Unless she hounds to death every new suitor that Tommen has, she's going to... Yeah.
And in that case, their line will end with him.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
But could this be the downfall of both queens? They're, like you said at the beginning of our discussion, at one point Cersei was way up, Margaery was way down, and now they're both down equally. So
yeah, except I think Marjorie's had a bounce just because Marjorie's accusers have been proven to be false, and that is a big help. That's a big help.
Yeah,
when someone lies against you, when the prosecution lies and you can prove that somebody in the prosecution lied, you look a lot more innocent.
Sure do. Yep, absolutely. Is this the last we'll see of Taena Merryweather?
I don't know.
She was such an intriguing character.
I'll be disappointed if the Merryweathers come back in all their finery. Oh, we were just getting nice clothes for the trial and the Hand of the King thing.
Right. I am still Hand of the King, right?
You are the turned tail of the king is what you are, sir. Will Kevin come back? Can he be found? I mean, he was off sulking last time we saw him.
Right.
And if he does come back, can he fix the problems that Cersei's created? They are deep.
Oh, there's so many. So many. There's some I don't think he can fix right away anyway.
He might be able to stop war between the Lannisters and the Tyrells. But
yes.
But the problem is not if Margaery is executed.
No. Absolutely not. No, you're right. And as morbid as this may be, if Margaery's executed and war breaks out between the Lannisters and the Tyrells, is this the break that Stannis needed to get back into the race for the Iron Throne? Because he's real down right now. As we saw Margaery down, might he bounce back from this?
Interesting. I hadn't thought of the geopolitical implications of all this. All right. Next up, we have the twins' perspective, presumably getting the letter pleading for him to come back to King's Landing and then jumping on his horse and riding back at top speed to save the day.
Right. So here's the deal, right? Like, we know that they are not in a good place, Cersei and Jaime. Really not a good place. But would he gets this letter. Is there any chance he doesn't go to his sister's aid and just lets her hang? I mean, not she might physically hang, but I mean, just leaves her there with, him not coming to her rescue?
I think partly it might depend on the words that Qyburn uses. And Qyburn is still pushing this unbeatable champion thing. So maybe he's like, Hey, Jaime, come back. Sorry for some of the things I said. I'm in a bit of hot water.
Right. I'm in a pickle.
Yes, as you said.
Right.
Channeling your inner Qyburn.
But so maybe, sometimes difficult times like this remind people that they really do love each other. Like, the thought of actually losing his sister might be enough to say, you know what? I love my sister. I've always loved my sister. I gotta go help her right now. She is my twin and my lover and the mother of my children.
Well, listeners, you only have a week to wait to find out. You and I have 3 weeks to wait to find out.
Yes, we do.
All right, there's 3 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a positive review and a 5-star rating, as THJ Synergy did. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhall. There you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest. The upper tiers get you the spoilers. Or you can make a donation directly to our cause at our website, ghostsofharrenhall.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, first off, you can send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode's show notes. And if you're looking to keep up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.